loops down together, so they run parallel around the link.
All flush, all looking good.
Really
yeah,
important.
gotcha. Now, we're going to move on to the next rig, okay? But one of the important things that I want to talk about is rig length. But let's look at the next one. Material, mechanics, sort of why and when.
Okay, well it's the Supernatural braid, which I'm a great braid fan, particularly stalking. I use braid a lot.
Right.
And normally sort of 4 to 6 inch hook lengths. And braid suits me perfectly because I'm often, when I'm stalking, I'm positioning rigs on spots where I can see clearly on the bottom, you know, as clear as the gravel in this swim. You can see the spot, you know where the fish is feeding, and I've got position within that spot that I want to put my rig, and I know how I want it to lay, and I like the braid because it enables me to do that. It's that your Supernatural braid hugs the bottom beautifully.
Right.
And it's also green, so it's a sort of very natural colour within the swim.
Yeah.
It's that sort of weedy green colour, so it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, there's the gravel brown one as well, but I suppose for a lot of your fishing on these
often,
low stock lakes, there's
even if you've got a bit of gravel on the bottom, there's a bit of weed kicking about, there are weedy waters, so that sort of light greeny colour blends beautifully with the bottom. It doesn't get the fish's suspicion up.
Notice that this is slightly different with regards to mechanics. You've got the hair coming out the back of the eye this time. Right. Talk us through why and how you tie this one up.
Again, a rig is very similar to the first one, as you touched on. The difference being that I don't have the bit of silicone there. That's a very adaptable rig. I can use that, possibly tip that with a little bit of sweet corn, you know, the old plastic corn.
Floating.
Yeah, to give it a little bit of buoyancy, and I like that with that setup. It tends to just lift the eye of the hook up, so that helps with the old rig mechanics on that one. It's a very effective setup. I've caught a lot of fish on that with bottom baits as well as semi-buoyant. So,
yeah. And then looking up it, obviously got the hair, and then looks like the old liner.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the liner. From the old school era of
Jim
carp fishing. Jim Gibbonson, eat your heart out.
Yeah.
It's a devastatingly effective setup. It doesn't work so well if you're using little sticks, I found, and that's one of the reasons with the other rig that I've tied there. I've had it coming straight at the bottom of the rig tube.
Right.
So that comes, when you pull that into your stick, it goes into the stick really nicely. So if you use the liner and you pull it into the stick, sometimes I find it gets caught up and it doesn't sit as well. So I prefer to use the liner like that setup we've got here if I was maybe stalking and placing a bait without using a stick.
Okay. And then running down it, again, I presume you just steam that down.
Yeah, that's right.
And then down to the ring swivel. Sort
of 15 centimetres, 6 inch hook link there, and down to a ring swivel, as you say.
Okay.
And that would be, if I had to go anywhere, that would be the sort of setup, you know, I'd probably take both those rigs. I'd be confident in most fishing situations that between the two of them, I've got something that I could catch a fish with.
Well, you certainly caught a few, mate. And then lead system wise, I've noticed this week, especially because it's the first time I've had a chance to sort of fish with you. Very simple lead system.
I'm a big fan of flattened inline pairs.
Yeah.
I like the bolt effect that they give you. 3s, 4s. If I'm stalking right on the edge, maybe 4s, maybe even bigger. If I'm casting out, I'm not a great fan of boshing out big leads, so something like a 3.
So that's just basically safe zone leader.
Yeah, that's right.
Shock leader sleeve inside
like
there.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've tapped the insert out of the lead and pushed that over there.
Yeah.
So just a very, very simple inline that I suppose it's kind of like how a lot of us started really, and you've carried on using it.
Yeah, no, I think that you can get yourself completely and utterly in a tangle over rigs and lead setup, and you know, location is vitally important to me. I spend more time worrying about that than the rigs. I'm confident with that setup, if I get in front of feeding fish and put it on the right spot, I'm going to catch them.
Now, a question I was dying to ask you was, from all the fish you've studied and all the things you've seen at Sparsholt, do you see carp feed from different lengths off the bottom, basically? You know.
I'm not a great fan of the belief that carp sort of suck things up from 3 or 4 inches away. When I watch them feeding, they tend to come pretty close to the food item and then suck it in.
Right. Okay.
I think that's.
So is there
when they're drawing bait off the bottom, if they're sucking bait, obviously bits of bait that are 3 or 4 inches away might move towards the mouth, but I think their intended target's normally a bit closer than that.
So they're generally hoovering.
Yeah.
Right. The other question I have, does that now mean that whenever you tie a rig, there's an optimum length that you'd ever go up to? Is there a maximum you'd ever use?
No, I've caught fish on long hook lengths, or 18-inch hook lengths before, so I'm not. different situations, baiting situations, for example. I think if you're perhaps, as you know, Dan is obviously a great fan of sort of spod mix, putting quite a lot of small food items in a swim. In those situations where fish are hoovering very close to the bottom,
very slowly as well,
very slowly, then they become, I think, much harder to catch.
Definitely.
So very short hook link that's very effective. Wallop turns over quick.
They hit the lead quick.
As soon as they suck it up, whap.
Right.
I think if you're spraying boilies out over a swim, then the carp tend to be swimming between boilie to boilie to boilie. You get more movement than a longer hook link. Short hook links are all well and good, you know, in Dan's situation, but if the bottom's a bit mucky and stuff, then you're not going to get the presentation right. So you kind of got a bit of a balance.
Yeah, I suppose you need to then take into account your lead system and how much hook link's going to stick out on the bottom once it's gone in, etc., etc. Well, that's fascinating me. I mean, that was the biggest thing I wanted to find out, is whether, because it's always been a bit of a myth that carp sometimes suck up from a different length, but you know,
I'm sure they do suck bait in from 3 or 4 inches away, but it's not what they're actually aiming to suck up.
Okay, so so to recap, your length is provisionally dictated by the type of bottom you're fishing on, and then ultimately by your baiting situations.
Yeah, and also to an extent what other anglers are doing around the lake. If everyone's fishing with 8 to 10 inch hook links, then maybe go very short or a bit longer. You know, they learn through association, and if every rig they pick up is one length, then
they learn to deal with it.
They learn to deal with it, so do something longer or shorter to try and throw them.
Right.
And the same applies with hook size, bait size, everything. If there's a big pattern on a lake, everyone's doing the same thing, then trying to do something different. Obviously fish one rod the same as everyone else, just in case it really works well.
Bandwagon rod, your bandwagon.
Get on the bandwagon, but then try something a little bit different, see if you can't create your own line of attack.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, there we have it. Simon Scott, half carp, half man, giving us an inroad into his rig thinking.